brought to you by Quick Hits News over the Haps TV live app. Shu, how you doing tonight? We it's been a strange evening. Google apparently went down, or at least the cloud went down, and so the technology has been a little bit strange. But in any case, I want to talk to you real briefly before we get to Andy Rosegen in Louisville, Kentucky, for an update on what's going on there, and Joe Williams from U.S. News World Report, and Ariel Hickson from Quick Hits News. Sure, there was a remarkable moment today at the Supreme Court where it looked like Donald Trump got booed. I'm going to play this for you and see how this does. Hold on one second, see if we can hear it. And speaking of politics, 40 days, Michael Shore, until the November 3rd election. You've got some interesting reporting on voter turnout, which has already happened. The voting has already begun in Virginia. Tell us about it. Okay. Michael Shore with Quick Hits News. He's going to be covering the debates. Shu, thanks for leading off our 10 o'clock hour with the political update. We appreciate it. I want to bring in now Ariel Hickson and Joseph Williams. Joe Williams is with U.S. News and World Report. Ariel Hickson is with Quick Hits TV. First of all, we're going to get to those in just a moment to talk about some remarkable video that he brought us tonight. But first of all, Ariel, what do you make of your reaction when you hear the reports about early voting being very intense in a place like Virginia?
Absolutely. And what I've seen, especially on social media and just across many news outlets, is this push to really get your vote in early, to register early, to send those votes out as early as possible. The idea that there is a push regarding voter fraud and the possibility that votes cannot be counted, something that President Trump has been kind of saying to the public. The counter action of that is young people as possible. What I have seen is this idea that in the past, with those last elections, people who did not vote at all really were people who kind of had on the election and what the turnout was. So with this election right now, for those who are for President Trump, they are very much for him, and they're just going to go to the ballot, and you'll see exactly who they'll push for. But for those who are against him, but who are not for Biden, they are still asking people to vote for him. If you do not vote for Biden, it's a lost vote. And if you decide not to vote, it's a lost vote. So I think now getting those votes in. So the early rush is not that surprising.
Let's bring in Joe Williams, U.S. News and World Report. Joe, first I want to get your reaction to what happened at the Supreme Court today with Donald Trump being booed, being jeered, and also what do you make of the heavy voter turnout that we're seeing in places already like Virginia?
I have to be honest with you, with Donald Trump showing up at Ruth Bader Ginsburg's casket to pay respects, not a surprise at all that that crowd would give him what for, mostly because they are, as Michael said, allied with Ginsburg in her views. But it also was, I thought, a really very real world demonstration of just the sort of visceral anger that's out there on the left and the resentment that they have towards this president. And a lot of that is going to be unleashed, which brings me to the polls in Virginia. Early voting is usually the province of Democrats. Republicans tend to vote on time on election day. So that kind of a surge indicates that there is going to be a lot of votes cast for Joe Biden in the state of Virginia. Another thing I want to note is a viral video that's going around has Amy Klobuchar dressing down Ted Cruz in the Senate Judiciary Committee, basically giving him the riot act because he was talking about how the judicial nomination process is basically theater. But Amy Klobuchar, in her viral video remarks, was saying almost exactly the same thing, that people are voting right now, that she's seeing a surge of Democratic votes voting by mail. People that she's talked to, her representatives on the ground, say that the surge is real and that it's happening, and that early voting is breaking all kinds of records in states that have it. So you have two very worrying potential signs for President Donald Trump, and probably a justification, or not a justification, but a reason why he may be talking so much about not relinquishing power, because these forces are really very strong, and he will have to hold on almost any way that he can. And it seems like that's a worrisome sign, but it's not at all out of character for Donald Trump, I would say.
We're showing you a live picture. Joe Williams, U.S. News and World Report, is going to stand by. We want to show you this live picture from our Andy Rosegen with Quick Hits News, who is reporting live tonight from Louisville, Kentucky. The other aspect, of course, in addition to what's happening with the Supreme Court, there's still this very heavy issue of race relations in the United States, which is weighing very heavily on both parties 40 days until this election. And in Louisville, Kentucky, where two police officers were shot last night, they're both expected to recover. There was, of course, the grand jury decision yesterday not to bring a charge against any of the police officers involved in the Breonna Taylor shooting, although one officer was charged for wanton endangerment for firing shots at a neighboring house. Andy Rosegen, what has been the scene like tonight?
Well, actually, it's been a long night of demonstrating and protesting and marching throughout the streets of Louisville tonight, David, but apparently it has come to an end here at this church. You see back there, a lot of the demonstrators have arrived here for sanctuary. The church is offering them a place to stay tonight if they would so choose, because we're well past curfew. And in the meantime, I'll turn around here and you can see the police officers keeping watch over the demonstrators back there. They're holding their fire, so to speak, for now. They're not moving in yet, although they've warned everyone that they should move on. But these protesters say they have a long history with this church, as the church does with them. In fact, somebody from the church came out earlier and said that we in the media could come out as well come into the church if we needed sanctuary. So that's where it's all ended. Good news for everybody all around that apparently this has become a peaceful night. We can show you earlier, and we talked about it earlier, there was a really tense confrontation a couple hours ago when members of this protest group just moved on, and one of the leaders of the Black Lives Matter protests actually walked past me after it was over, and he said, "Man, moved on." They marched throughout the downtown, and then they marched for a while, David, through the kind of trendy riverfront area of Louisville, where it's a very big touristy destination for a lot of tourists. Then they wound up here at the church, where they are all kind of quiet now. They're just kind of going inside. They all have sanctuary now because this is it's a private property, and police are hanging back. So good news all around that all of this has come to an end in terms of any problems tonight. One more thing I should mention. The FBI is still investigating this Breonna Taylor case, and they could still file charges, David, against these officers if they wish, including civil rights charges. So that is another aspect that a lot of these demonstrators are hoping gets some play.
Said it, and as far as tomorrow, and is this a continual protest that they're hoping to do, and also for the Oath Keepers, these militias who say that they were invited in, by some of the local businesses, do they intend to come back?
Well, the Oath Keepers say they'll stay here as long as they are asked to be here. As far as the demonstrators, boy, we're going on night 120-ish, I think, of demonstrations, so these probably won't end anytime soon. The only question that ever happens at night is, will they be riotous? Will they be violent? So they'll continue on. I talked to one woman here just a few minutes ago, one of the demonstrators. I said, look, where do you go from here? I mean, you can do all the demonstrating you want. Is it working? She goes, yes, we're getting national and international media attention, all this, and that's a good thing. But I said, what else can you do? I mean, really, what can you do to affect real change here besides marching in the streets? And she kind of laughed and she said, well, get rid of Donald Trump, for one thing. But I said, from aside that, what can you do? And she said maybe, they can lobby politicians, but really now it comes down to a matter of getting changes, both in how the Louisville Police Department does its job. There were some reforms that were already made after the Taylor killing, but now it comes down to legislative work. Can they make an effect change statewide and citywide to get what they want?
Andy Rosen reporting live from Louisville, Kentucky. Andy, we will keep you on just for a few more minutes here. I want to go to Joe Williams. And Joe, your reaction to the video of this sort of confrontation, if you call it that, where you have the Oath Keepers with their weapons and you have activists essentially nearby. One Oath Keeper says, F this, and walks by Andy Rosen. Obviously, he was frightened. What do you make of this?
Fascinating that we have groups from both sides, and despite the bravado of walking out there with weapons, people have largely kept their emotions on that score in check. I think that's a very positive sign. I do, however, worry that anything could trigger. They don't mix. I did think it was kind of amusing that the black militiamen and the white militiamen confronted each other, and the white militiamen kind of staged a strategic retreat. So I don't know what that says, if anything, but certainly the better, the common sense got the better of the two. But I want to speak to two other things really quickly. The first is a federal investigation we've seen this time and time again. In Ferguson, the same thing happened. There were calls for a federal investigation. The investigation resulted in no charges. That's because
you think it's funny? You think it's funny, bitch?
In a situation like this. The second thing is the state of Louisville. The protests are largely peaceful, in part because people got the message, but also in part because Louisville was on lockdown from 2 days out before the verdict of the grand jury was announced. There was a perimeter set around the city, and only certain people were allowed inside. And it doesn't surprise me that the protests are largely smaller. And what I'd like to know from Andy is how large have they been? Are they large in scope? Are they smaller? Are they about steady in terms of size?
Joe, tonight seemed a little bit larger to me in terms of the numbers that were showing up for a while. It changes. It's sort of in flux as the night goes on. Starts out kind of small. They gain steam after a while. But I would say there were hundreds that marched to the streets. I would say it was probably on par with last night in a lot of ways. But I no doubt that as the days go on here, and we see this all the time, the media starts to go away. The interest kind of wanes. And I think after the real violence last night, that was kind of a tipping point. As we see every time at one of these days-long protests, you get a real one violent night, like there's a shooting, people are killed, or in last night's case, police officers shot. And after that, things just kind of calm down, and that's what we're seeing tonight.
Well, these are the largest demonstrations that I think that this nation has seen in a very long time, and what it's bringing to light that these are racial issues that have just been plaguing our country for so long, to the point where right now we're really seeing a clash. Now, I think from what I saw earlier with where Andy was with that kind of clash there, Joe had a very good point here that at the end of the day, there is a lot of tense feelings on both sides, but there could be more eruptions that's happening. And at the end of the day, in order to get voices heard, peaceful protests are the best way. And as we can see, just from all different perspectives, even from the comments below on this broadcast, this world, this nation is extremely divided. And the question is, how can we bring both sides together?
You can send them to, you can ask questions of me or Andy Rosegen or Joe Williams. And again, it's a very interactive platform that we have here. The Quick Hits News Team, which is our group of journalists, we do a daily show every day at 5 o'clock East, that it publishes at 5 o'clock East Coast time, where we sort of go through the top 10 or 12 stories in about 15 minutes. And then we have extended live coverage that we do through HAPS TV, like what we're doing now with Andy Rosegen live on the scene in Louisville, Kentucky. So this is an opportunity for you to be part of this coverage if you want. Andy, I got to sort of ask you, do you get a sense in terms of, Kenosha, Wisconsin is sort of very much on a lot of people's minds when you have people from, militia groups and vigilantes who are trying to help police, and fears that somebody sort of loses their cool. Is there much of a discussion or awareness among the people who have weapons about, okay, we need to take it upon ourselves to try to make sure that we keep things calm?
I don't get much of a sense of that at all. I think there's a lot of bravado among both sides. I talked last night about a mostly black left-wing militia group that has been here, and the right-wing militia groups have been here. Boy, they are all about bravado and intimidation. And although they move around under the guise of trying to help and trying to be part of the solution, the locals here, as they did in Kenosha, Wisconsin, were furious at both sides. In fact, today I saw a television station did a breakdown of the arrests last night here in Louisville. There were 127 arrests last night, 30% of those were people who were outsiders. And the people here in Louisville want all of them to go away. The Oath Keepers are from North Carolina and Texas. They are not welcome for a lot of people here. And even the TV station that did this breakdown found that 30% of those arrested last night were outsiders. They interviewed a young woman who had a very compelling story to tell. Her brother had been killed in gang violence years ago. She was arrested last night here. That she says the police never solved her brother's case. She showed video on social media of how she was kept in a bathroom stall for several hours last night, along with some other people who were arrested. They were arrested for protesting. But then it turns out she's not even from here. She's from Detroit. And so locals say, please go away. We want you to go away, whichever side you're on.
And you've got a question. I want to, I teased the opportunity for people to ask questions. We have a Kevin who asked a question specifically for you. Andy, how many protesters are out tonight? More or less than last night? Question mark.
Boy, I'm terrible at that guessing game, when you have jelly beans in a jar and you're supposed to guess how many are in there. I am terrible at that, but I will take a wild guess and say a couple hundred were on the streets tonight. That's about on par with what we had last night. Again, I think that as each night goes on, it gets a little bit less, but I think we're in the 200 range, roughly. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You can go ahead, Joe.
Okay, but I think that it will nudge it. I don't think it will change it drastically. Last night we were talking about how Donald Trump and his law and order platform are likely to get a boost from this. I know that this afternoon he tweeted law and order in all caps, so he's going to be going hard after this and at least going to get a mention. He had a rally in Pensacola tonight. Not really sure if he mentioned it or not because the rally was taking place right around the evening time. And we will probably hear more and more about this from him as the days go by. He offered federal support to the mayor of Louisville, and he offered to bring in troops. But the mayor said, no, we've got this. Don't worry about it. And Trump apparently agreed because he did not send in troops against the mayor's wishes. On the other side of the coin, it's going to be a bit of an issue for Joe Biden because he is going to get challenged with this, if not by the media, then certainly by President Trump. Biden has already tweeted rather, that law and order is not that law and order takes a day, but certainly that peaceful protests should take place. Violence has no place in these demonstrations. So he's already getting his message out about the fact that he is not in favor of violence. He is in favor of peaceful protest, and he is in favor of trying to make change. Now, whether or not it's going to come up in his campaign speeches, it's hard to say. I don't think it will, mostly because the law and order stuff is Trump's domain, and Biden is still trying to stay focused on the coronavirus response and Trump's bungled handling of that. Plus, there's a new headache with President Trump saying that he's not going to peacefully relinquish power and that courts are going to be involved in deciding the election. So there are other things for Biden to worry about. For Trump, this plays into his campaign message, and I expect we'll hear more of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I could see that, but I think at this point, with COVID-19, COVID is just an ongoing issue, and it keeps going. It's going to be going well into the next couple of years. We're going to be having the after effects of that. And as that number continues to climb, it's still in the back of people's heads. And those who have experienced personal loss with COVID-19 or, something as little as they can't do certain things like, go and have a job, I think that will will continue to weigh on as we get closer and closer to the election. Yes, the protests are huge. Yes, there are distractions, I think, from everything. I think that this year has been very difficult for the world right now. But at the end of the day, COVID is the little thing that is still in the back of our minds. And I think at the end of the day, that's going to be very much on people's perspectives once they are casting that ballot, either before or on the day of election day.
Well, I can talk about politics. Go ahead, Joe.
Just want to offer a really quick observation is that, like, piggybacking off that point, that I think is part of the problem is that COVID was front and center in the early months of this year in spring and midsummer. But now we've kind of gotten used to it. And that's one of the problems I think that's going to be difficult to resolve. I mean, the fact that we've got sports back, we've got we've gotten used to working from home. Some places are opening bars and restaurants, but with street service. But we're getting ready to turn the corner to something that could be really drastic, and that is flu season. So I think we've done ourselves a disservice by normalizing the fact that we're living with this virus, and we're leading the nation, we're leading the world, along with countries like Brazil and India, in a company that we don't really want to be kept in. And that is the fact that we haven't been able to control the virus. We're still not even working on it. We don't necessarily have a plan. We're working on a virus, which is a home run when what we needed to be doing is hitting singles all day.
Indeed. In fact, 22 states are now reporting that they have had a rise in COVID infections over the past week. So it does seem, at least for now, we're in another sort of spike or another second wave. We're going to do it. That's going to be it for this broadcast. I want to thank Joe Williams with U.S. News and World Report and Errol Hickson with Quick Hits News. Any night that anybody gets to talk politics or anything else with these two is a good night indeed. And also a good night that it seems like things are peaceful tonight in Louisville, Kentucky. Thanks to Andy Rosegen for his reports there and showing us this early the tensions that still exist, although right now it seems like tonight has been a much more peaceful night than last night. On behalf of the entire Quick Hits News team and everybody at HAPS, I'm David Schuster. Thanks for watching.